Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I am a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on February 10th, 2023 at approximately 4:28 p.m. PST. We don't require that. Now, I have returned to this world for one primary purpose, and that is to remind people that working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. I bill myself as a spiritual guide simply because the tools I offer are the same tools I personally live by. They're the same ones that I work with. The philosophies of life that I talk about are the ones that I have lived my entire life by. And to this end, it is time we take a look at the other thing, at least in my opinion. People on the whole have been taught to live in fear of virtually everything. Virtually everything and everybody. So before we get into it, we will start with Eric Markham coming in with the gold. Adam Lakatos is in second with the silver. And then we go down, we have Maggie M10 is in with the bronze. And down a bit, and we get Kimberly Paget in with honorable mention. Now, greetings, all of you. Now, the reality of it is we have been, we as a society, as a people. How you doing, little Katie? We have been taught as a people to fear everything. And we are taught that when you fear something, curl up and succumb to whatever it is. I'm here to tell you that yes, fear is a powerful thing, but it is something that we can use in a positive fashion. Okay, and yes, I know that goes against virtually everything you've been taught. Okay, and we're going to sneeze. Maybe. Don't you hate that? Anyway, looking down here, we have Joe. Welcome, Joe. And what? Gotta go down. Oh, there we are. It's not rolling up. There we go. We have Luna Sparkles, Joe, and Philip. How you doing, guys? Glad you could join us. It's time we take a look at fear and see what it's really for. Fear does keep you out of trouble. Absolutely, it does. Okay. And this is one of those things that we really have to start turning around. If we're going to be taught, if everybody is going to, on the whole, be taught, fear everybody. Make certain if you don't bow down and worship somebody that is very temperamental and is likely to hurt you if you don't do it. Now, I don't know about you, but the moment somebody says, do this or I'm going to punish you, I don't bend down and worship very well. Which may explain why I haven't set foot in a church, even for my marriage. Okay. In, let's see, about 40 years. Now, don't get me wrong. I am still a very firm believer in God. Whether you want to call it God, Allah, Buddha, Gaia, don't matter to me. I like the way William Shakespeare put it. A rose by any other name would smell as sweet. Now, that is terrible there, Joe. The fact that it's been long and rough. Hopefully it'll get better from here on out. Okay, now, am I the answer to everything? Heck, I barely got the answer to what's your name. So no, realistically, I'm not. But I will tell you this. Okay, no matter how we look at it, if we succumb to the idea that fear is going to guide our life, then yes, absolutely, what we have been told. Okay, what we have been told that the world is going to go through massive problems. Mr. L, how you doing? Glad you could join us. If we succumb to that belief, to those teachings, my apologies, terrible English, probably terrible in any other language. If we can succumb to that, then yes, the world will continue on a degrading cycle, but it is up to you, the people of this planet, not just the elites, not just the politicians, not just the off-worlders. It is up to every single one of you, okay, to do your part to turn things around, to change the way your individual life is going. Okay. Now, half of the reason that I have held myself back from doing much is because of a very simple little problem. Christine, how you doing? Glad you could join us today. The reality is I spent most of my life trying to figure out, how am I going to fit into this chaos? Well, the only way to fit into it is to kind of, as near as I can figure, is to succumb to it and go, okay, I'm going to fear everything around me. Okay. Now, my biggest fear has always been my own temper, and it has gotten the better of me way too many times. Fortunately, in my life, I've only hit 3 people out of anger. Okay. And that was all when I was a kid, not counting family. Okay. But we have a choice here. We can continue looking out the back door and going, okay, 2022 or whatever day, whatever month in the past is where things turn sour for you. You can look at that and go, okay, life is miserable. Absolutely. You can look that way. And you're welcome to it. Personally, I look at the past going, yeah, I made some serious miscalculations. Okay. Absolutely, I did. However, I'm choosing to look at it going, I made miscalculations. I did some things that were absolutely stupid. Okay, stupid as in I knew better and did them anyway. I'm sure you guys have done the same thing. Not the same specific item, but something that looking back on it, you went, I knew I shouldn't have done that. Okay, and yet I did it anyway. Whenever we succumb to following in the roots of fear and responding the way we're told we have to, we run into a very big problem. Okay. Now, I remember years ago, I ran into a guy, and I'll use the term guy because he wasn't exactly human, but on the other hand, he had the same attitude. He walks into my house and he goes, I am so-and-so, and you will fear me. I looked at him and went, after lunch. So he repeats himself. Okay. He turns around and repeats himself. I am. And the name he used, I kid you not, the name he used was Mephistopheles. Okay. He's like, I am Mephistopheles. You will fear me. I says, we already discussed that after lunch. Okay. Now, I've had the same response to people doing real silly things, and I do hope I don't have to go through this again. Okay. I really didn't. It's really not a good way of doing things in a lot of senses. No, the guy, in all fairness, the guy, when I say he walked into my house, the door was closed and he walked through it. There were 4 other witnesses at the time. Okay. Now, do I know where any of these guys are anymore? No. In all fairness, I've lost contact pretty much with everybody from my past. And I came to the conclusion this morning, I'm just not going to bother with it anymore. But I'm just looking at what's and just scanning through. And like I said, your guys talking through, talking back and forth amongst you. I forget who the guy was, but there was a chap that came in here about a week or so back and really turned around and went, boy, talk about a bunch of trolls. And I have no idea what he was getting at, because I'm looking at the chat room, and yes, some of you guys talk to each other, and I thoroughly encourage that. In all fairness, if you don't know who Mephistopheles is directly attached to a chap you may know as Satan. Okay, not a nice chap for most people. When he walked into my house, there were 4 other people. He made that comment. They all turned chalk white and up against the wall. Okay, problem was one of them started out black. From my hey Carl, how you doing? Glad you could join us. what was or was he? No, I've dealt with people from Men in Black, and yes, the Men in Black that you have heard of in the movies and what have you are a real group of people. However, them, in all fairness, I've come to the conclusion somebody may one day come along and make me actually dead for the last time, at least for this lifetime. So far, it hasn't worked out that well, at least not from their standpoint. From my standpoint, life and death it becomes a synonymous run. You have a choice. You can live in fear and let that stop you, or you can live in fear and let that motivate you. Okay, and that is the choice you've got to make. You can fear the world falling apart in front of you, or you can choose to do something about it. Now, I cannot make the decision for you. I can tell you, when I reached that understanding, and in all fairness, it really wasn't that long ago, I don't think. When you reach that understanding that the choice is yours as to whether you're going to live in fear or thrive in it. Now, do understand, thriving in fear is not to say you should treat anybody poorly. Karmic law still holds. Be true to yourself first. Do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Energy out, energy in. Okay. If you follow those three laws, and those are the only three I follow. I'm just looking up here. Eric is just informing us. Mephistopheles is from the German folklore, and it's the demon of the Faust legend. Okay. Many of the names that people use are from the past or from folklore or from history. You would not believe how many people over time I have met that have said literally, I am King Henry VIII reincarnated. There was only one King Henry VIII, people. Everybody can't be that. Okay. Everybody is not a famous person from the past. Okay. One of my best lifetimes, one of my most enjoyable lifetimes. I was simply a fisherman. That was it. Up in Northern Ireland, if you went to Dublin today and went due northeast or due northwest, all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, that's where my fishing village was. One of the most enjoyable lifetimes I've had in recent years. Okay, and who do we got here? Lunar Sparkles, how you doing? Glad you could join us. It is time. Fear is a great motivator. If you're afraid of losing something, if you're afraid of losing your finances, afraid of losing your other half, maybe you're having troubles with your girlfriend or your boyfriend, and you're afraid of losing them, use this as a motivator to change the way you're dealing with things. That really boils down to, in the case of a relationship, whether it is with a girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, co-worker, boss, child, it doesn't matter. Okay. The solution is the same thing across the board. And the reason I'm saying this, that it's across, what do we got here? It's funny, I visit his place, and that's actually not bad there, Joe. Joe's just asking, I'm going to get morbid, but how often does Satan visit your house? In all fairness, she doesn't come here very often. I usually go and see her at her place. But that being said, I show up down in hell and they're like, what are you doing here? And I'm passing through, just figured I'd come down and say hi to some of my friends. There is no functional difference from my standpoint, because I come and go as I please. I had a discussion with a chap one day, and he's sitting there, and he was trying to threaten me, and I looked at him, and I'm looking at him going, really? And he goes, I've seen you in hell. I said, okay, so hell won't hold me, and you're still trying to tick me off. I says, is this the kind of stupidity that got you killed in the first place? So I mean, from my standpoint, as the saying goes, stupid is as stupid does. Now, let's understand. I know telling somebody they're being stupid is apparently insulting. It's apparently, what's the word? Politically incorrect, and people don't like it. Probably not. But let's be clear. When I say somebody is being stupid, this means you know better and you're doing it anyway. Okay. Now I've done things that have been absolutely stupid. Okay, I am not immune to stupidity. Not fond of it, but I'm certainly not immune to it. So I'm just going to scan up here a fraction. And yes, I do that a lot. By the way, guys, I am not making the mistake of getting back up on another on another stool. That was a bad idea. But we have a choice here. Now, you've been told the world is going to go through massive food shortages. It's going to go through massive rent increases. If you're a landlord, here's a bizarre idea. You want to fill your house up you want to fill your apartment block with people that are actually going to stay put. Number one, and this applies to every landlord that isn't doing this. And it's going to sound completely backwards, completely counterintuitive. The funny thing, and before I get to that, I'm just looking at what Lunar Sparkles just what he just said, or what she just said. My husband's reincarnation story is self-surfing also. Now the reality of it is, most people have a self-serving or have some aspect of themselves that they portray as being better in order to help them feel alive, feel more worthy. Now, if you'll notice, just up here, you'll notice a sign I've got that says, I am worth it. Okay. That is a starting point. But when you look at it, everybody across the board desires to be thought well of. Okay. Everybody decides to get recognized for what they're doing right. So I'm going to jump back half a step here. For all of you who are landlords, whether you run an apartment block or you've got tenants in your basement, it doesn't matter. You want to help people out. Make sure you don't hang yourself in the process. Okay. But with the rise in cost of living and what have you. Now, there's a simple solution to the rise into inflation. And every government has the same capacity to do it. And Lord knows they've done it on various different things. If we desire to stop inflation, all that has to come out, and it will stop inflation just like that. You turn around and you go, from a governmental standpoint, okay, we are knowing right now, as of right this moment, we are freezing all wages, freezing all wages and all prices. Inflation has now ended at that point. If you own an apartment block or even a quadplex that you've got a manager on site, you want to make things work really well for you? Quit charging your managers. Okay, quit charging rent. They're already working. Okay, they're already putting in all the time. Why are you still charging them half price even? Is it not enough to have somebody there that can dedicate all of their time to the job you'd like them to do? Okay, now these are just simple little maneuvers. And yes, I realize it goes against everything you've been taught in all likelihood. And this is one of the reasons why I am here, is to turn the lights on and go, okay, you've been doing this consistently for decades. Every year we have inflation. Why do we have inflation? Because some genius out there goes, I want more money and I want to do less work. Okay, it's just that simple. Nathan, how you doing? Glad you could join us. Now, just remember, Nathan, you pay more attention to the driving than you do to the listing. Because let's face it, the last thing that any of us, well, might not be the last thing. Maybe you've got some people that don't like you. But the last thing I personally want from your standpoint is to find out you were listening to the show and got run over by a semi because you weren't paying attention. This would be a bad thing. Eric, what am I looking at here? The only past life that I have connected with, I was just an old guy walking down by the seaside when a tidal wave hit me and the rubble in it obliterated me. Well, there's a rough way to go. I had the same thing happen, only I wasn't in the water. No, my apologies. That was not quite the case. I watched a lot of people go through that. I was on the shore on the bank above Manoa when the tidal wave hit. Tell you, it was a sight and a half to see, but one I would have rather avoided. I'm just looking at this, and the reality of it is we have to make a choice as individuals, and absolutely turn to the people that you can feel connected to. Okay, absolutely reach out to them and talk to them about what you're going through. Maybe they can give you a little bit of insight into how to cope with it. Okay. Well, we can safely say that it's in. Now, here's the thing, Eric, and I know this one because it was there. Atlantis wasn't wiped out by a tidal wave, unless you count the satellite areas that may well have been. I wasn't here for that long. But Atlantis itself lifted off the ground. Okay. But Manoa was a mess. When the tidal wave hit Manoa, and that was when Thera blew up, that was a mess for a lot of people. It's kind of like Pompeii. Wasn't all that much fun either. But we have a choice. You can continue living in fear. You can continue going on a daily or weekly basis to somebody that says the world's going to end and you're all going to be punished, except for very few people who are really special, and God's going to come down and go, nope, you're fine. Bad news, especially for those people, not going to happen that way. Now, you can believe what you will. I am not telling you to believe it. I am not telling you that I've got the perfect answer. I will tell you that there isn't a one of you, including myself, that is more spiritually important than the next. Okay. There is no issue. This is not from anything I've seen. People have been talking about God or alien races or somebody else coming down to sort out your mess for literally millennia. Okay. And every time they turn around and go, somebody else is going to fix it, it doesn't get fixed. Adam is just asking, do you think the ETs are watching how we transport goods and how we conduct business? Absolutely. Okay, the off-worlders are absolutely watching that. They are also watching how you interact with each other as individuals, as communities, and as a society, as a species. This is what they're looking for. Right now is an extremely exciting time for them. From a xeno-socioeconomic standpoint, this is one of those times when you just want to be there to watch. If you're studying history, if you're studying a species evolution, this is the time to do it. Now, something that you may not be aware of, even if you're following the UFO community, is every time Mars reaches its closest point to Earth, UFO sightings, specifically of Martokian vessels, okay, which, by the way, a Martokian vessel looks like a standard saucer with a bubble on the top of it, okay, but the sightings of these vessels triples every time Mars gets to its closest point to Earth. Okay, now you figure out if that's a coincidence or if somebody's been feeding a whole lot of guess what to somebody. Okay, but this is an extremely important time for them. Well, here's the funny thing. Here's the funny thing, Eric. And I've told people, I literally told a priest this one day, right? If you look at the way it's written in the Bible, and I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole very far, but I will tell you, if any of you know somebody that has a radio show where that's where the focus is, I'll be more than happy to go on it and put my 2 cents in, as it were. But here's the one thing that it keeps telling you that I found in the Bible. Don't ask me the passage. Somebody out there may well know. And that is the statement that comes out, and I'm paraphrasing. And the church raised its arms unto the heavens, and raised it unto the sky, and raised its voice unto the heavens above. Now, I will tell you, in all of recorded history, I have never heard of a single building that did that. Not a single one. And if somebody has a building out there that does that will stand up and raise its arms up under the skies and raise its voice to the heavens above, there's a church to pay attention to, really look at. Or at least, at the very least, it's an engineering marvel. Okay. However, if you consider the corporeal body, that thing that you call a physical body, if you consider that the church, then number one, there's a whole pile of you out there. You all have the same ability. You all have the ability to change the world in your area for the better. But it's going to take work. It's going to take effort. And it's going to absolutely take acceptance of the responsibility of your own actions. I wonder if I've got that. I hope I've got that. So let's just not minimize this, but we'll put that to there. And let us see if down here we have, where is, what's that? No. I shut the thing down. Well, I guess we're just going to take a moment and open it back up. There we are. Because, guys, I told you I was going to try and figure this one out. So I did. Let us go back up here. I went through both the books I'm in the process of writing. Okay. Went through both of them in order to pull up that was not what I wanted, for crying in a water bucket. That just about came out really poorly. Okay, let's take that and put that over there. There we go. Okay, I did go through the two books, both Races of the Worlds and Races of the Worlds Volume 2. Okay, and I pulled together all the different, and I've got it partially completed, but I've got all the different ships now listed, so I can actually look it up. But what we have to look at, well, where are we here? Cannot see that very well. So bring that back up, and saw something coming up. Would you mind coming and bringing that up to light? Here we are. So, Lazarus, how you doing? No need to apologize. Like I've always told people, priorities have to be kept in order here. Your personal health has to stay as a priority. Okay. Family, work, then whatever else you want to do. But I will warn you, sometimes work has to take precedence, because if you don't keep a roof over your head, you're going to have a pretty miserable time of it. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm really not interested in living on the street. Okay. Oh. I'm not, in all fairness, Lazarus, I'm not really certain if I'm ever me. I leave that for somebody else to sort out. What did I see there? Gotta get down up to the top here. What's that? Oh, see, the thing is, we're taught to fear everything. Now, here's where fear becomes a real benefit. If you can... Whoa. Yeah, that's what I get for getting sidetracked. Oh, congratulations, Lazarus. Absolutely happy for you. Okay. That is one of these things that you look for. If somebody's willing to, and when I'm talking about pay you what you're worth, I don't mean pay you what you'd like to get necessarily. Okay. The critical factor around payment is, are you getting paid an honest day's wage for an honest day's work? You know, that's the reality behind it. But here's where fear is really beneficial. Okay. I got very upset the other day, and yes, I do get upset. Usually it's with corporations, but I finally came to the conclusion I can take that anger, that fear, which is where anger, let's be clear, is started by fear. You've got two emotions to work with. You've got love, all the positive side of things that you can pull together. You've got fear, the flip side of the same coin. Okay. And fear, of course, is the progenitor for, anger, for jealousy, for greed. It's all based on a fear of loss. Okay. Maybe you don't think you're good enough to maintain the attention of somebody you're really interested in. And maybe you're not. But do understand, it doesn't matter how much effort you put into something. Where it comes to communication, where it comes to a relationship, and let's be clear, a relationship is not always boyfriend, girlfriend, or anything else. Sometimes it is simply your relationship, your interaction with a professional. Like in my case, I've got a relationship with my mechanic. Whenever I have a problem, whenever I have a mechanical problem, I phone my mechanic. Hence why I tell people I'm mechanically inclined. Because every single time I'm inclined, I phone the mechanic. Okay. And again, if you're setting up an appointment, you're setting up a date. These are not frightening concepts, although you're told dating is scary. Dating is frightening. Change is difficult. Change is horrifying. And it's difficult to change. Well, I got bad news for you. Unless you're writhing on the ground right this second, okay, absolutely in unmanageable pain, you're not having a problem with change, because every time somebody says something, every time you think something, you're changing. Okay. The nice, what is this? You cannot deny that there is evil either. Well, I agree with you in one sense. I mean, technically you can deny it. There are staggering numbers of people that go, the world is flat. And there are thousands of believers in the flat earth around the globe. And of course, I have to sit there going, how is that possible? The funny thing there, Lazarus, is I don't really, as far as I know, the quotes that I have, I don't know if they're from history or if I heard them somewhere along the way or what the story is. But there are some phenomenal ones that really hold true. Yeah. Luna Sparkles is going, when I was 8, this dude gave me a Ouija board. After I checked it out, later I turned to a page in the Bible at the motel my parents were managers of. First page I turned to said Lazarus. Well, the first time I played around with a Ouija board, there were 4 of us with our hands on it. And I kid you not, the planchard, it was a wooden planchard. That's the thing they call that little pointer that you hold on the board. The first time we laid hands on it, it moved around a little, and all of a sudden, the planchard picked up off the ground off the table and buried itself in the concrete wall about 8 feet away from us. Now, of course, this is where things really started to stand out that I was a little bit of a different make. Because these three kids went running out of the room screaming their lungs out. I walked over to the planchard and started checking out the wall to try and figure out how I managed to pull it off. Don't get me wrong. I am a firm believer that whoever decided to market the Ouija board as a toy, there's all sorts of things that should happen there. And none of them are overly polite. They certainly have a spiritual outcome, just not a very spiritual path to get there. So I mean, when we're looking at fear, you can take a look at anything that's abnormal. What you call an abnormal life or a paranormal life, I call life. The reality of it is that we can take a look at what you're taught to fear. And you can go, okay, I'm going to fear that and I'm going to cower. I'm going to hide my head and I'm going to pray somebody else deals with it. Or you can go, okay, that's really not making me feel great. Okay, so I'm going to see what I can do to modify it. Now, I wasn't happy with the layout of my house, the layout of my office. So what did I do? I could have waited around until somebody came in and straightened it out for me. You can imagine how well that works since I won't unlock the door for most people. But something you have to realize. People I've heard so many people tell me that Ouija boards are evil. They are not. They are no more evil than a gun, but they can cause a lot more complications if used incorrectly. The nice little part about it is that while we're living in this world, we do have the choice of living in fear. And just to be clear there, Lazarus, the reality is I encourage people to talk in the chat room. Absolutely, I do. And I know that it's completely weird from what I've heard from other chat rooms, from other live streams. You can't talk about things outside of the stream. Well, you really can. Okay. The only thing I ask of people is that, and I've seen it happen before, that yes, absolutely, talk about the things that have your attention or ask questions. Okay. The reality of it is, this. Usually a question that is being asked is one that many, many, many people, not necessarily in the chat room right now, but listening on the internet or listening live from some other source. I don't know where all of this goes to. All I know is I sit here on YouTube and do this. I've tried going back to doing the half-hour pre-records. It hasn't worked out all that well because the computer keeps tanking on me. Now I don't know. From my standpoint, it really boils down to a very simple issue. Take a look at where your life is. Are you content with the path you're following? Are you happy with the way your life is going? And if not, do you have any idea how to alter that path? That's where I'm quite happy to step in. As many of you have seen, if you've got a question, even if it's not on the topic I'm talking about, put it, please ask in all caps in the chat room, because the reality is all caps does not mean you're yelling. At least in my chat room, it means you're waving your hand to say, hey, I'd like to ask you a question. Sorry to interrupt. That's all it means to me. Now there is a simple way of looking at life. You can be immobilized by fear, or you can be motivated by it. Okay, I finally came to the conclusion that it's time for me to quit holding things back. I don't have it out here. Of course not. I just found out, yeah, I wasn't there today, so it must have been yesterday. Went down to my printer and found out that I've actually already got a book in. I've already got a book in the printer that I didn't realize I had put there. Okay. But it's a channeled autobiography that talks about, it literally talks about what I went through as a kid and how my life shifted gears. Okay. From the standpoint and from what I was going through at the time. Now you've got the same option. You can look at what you did and what you've done in the past, what you've gone through, all of this. Okay. And you can decide that you're going to beat yourself black and blue for not having done it. Because Lord knows, so many times somebody says, I should have done this when I was a kid, when I was younger. And people go, it's too late to do it now. I'm telling you, they're wrong. I had a client, I know that was pretty blunt, but what the heck? I had a client years ago that told me she really wanted to be, she was 51 when I met her. And she told me she really wished she had gone after her MD. She desired to become a doctor, right? And she really wished she had done it when she was younger. So I talked to her for a little bit. And the long and the short of it was at 52 years old, she went into university to do her upgrading and become the MD she always desired to be. Now, the neat part about it, how you doing, Raven? Glad you could make it. On a direct personal note, I did get your email. I did respond to it. I just haven't seen a response in return. So there's one sitting in your bin. But I was talking to this woman, right? And she goes, I really wish I'd done it when I was younger. Now, she had hoped to be a doctor before she was 30. Here she was, 51. I said, look, the reality is you're not going to do it before you're 30. But there is absolutely nothing stopping you from becoming a doctor now. So she went through some hiccups along the way, right? She went through her troubles and she'd call me up. We'd talk a bit and she'd get back at her. And like I told her, she says, it's so hard. I says, yeah. But I says, think of the inspiration here. You're going into the medical profession to help people heal. And she goes, yes. I says, well, think of it. You're 52, or at this point, it was you're 54, matching the same pace as 20-year-olds, the same schedules. There's no, you don't get any breaks because you're a little older. You're just simply doing it. Well, at 60 years old, and like I told her, I says, you won't be a doctor for very long before you hit the so-called age of retirement. But at 60 years old, this woman got her actual MD. She became a doctor. Okay. The reality of it is that you have a choice. You won't be able to make up and to get things accomplished by a given age. If you've already passed that age, you're pretty much out of the window on it. This doesn't mean you can't accomplish it. It means you can't accomplish it by the original time frame. That's it. Okay, because bad news, going back in time to correct it isn't going to happen. It's a great thought, makes for beautiful storylines for, science fiction, science fantasy stories. Okay, it's a great way of dreaming. There's no problem with it. But from a practical standpoint, you're not going back in time. Okay, and I know there's a lot of you out there that figure, well, why can't we go back in time? The stories say you can. Well, I will tell you, it's a great thought, but it's a complicated issue. The nice little part about it is you can really turn around and make a difference in your own life. Many people are taught right from the get-go, and the amazing part about it, and I did it myself, Okay, from about 6 years old until I was 14. Every weekend, every weekend, every Sunday, I'd go to church and I would be told how bad the world was and how violent and vicious God was, but I was supposed to worship him. Okay. And I was told, God will forgive you for your sins. Okay. But only if you ask. Doesn't matter how close to the end of your life. Only if you ask. Right. And I watched what these people were doing and what it seemed to me. And way too many people do this. You're told, do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. People go out and treat each other like absolute garbage and then wonder why they're getting treated like garbage. Well, why they themselves are. Well, here's why. If you live in fear, okay, if you live your life based on fear, what you're going to do is you're going to draw that fear to you. If you base your life on being congenial with people, those are the kinds of people you'll start drawing to you. And I know it sounds way too simple to work because we're taught by parents, by teachers, by the politicians, by the educational system, your spiritual guides, fear everything. So I'll do it this way. Fear everything, but use that fear as a motivator to change the way your life is going. Okay. If you're not content with the way your life is currently running, it's time to start shifting gears. Okay. It is time to look in the mirror and go, okay, I am afraid of being broke when I'm in my senior years. Now is the time to start modifying what you're doing in order to actually get your life back on track. Luna Sparkles is just going, thank you, because I asked our Sunday school teacher why everything was one of Satan. Satan tricked or said maybe the Bible is one for Satan's tricks. I will tell you this. Okay, number one, and I don't want to get, and I know I keep saying I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole, but the reality is it's a pretty deep rabbit hole that most people are caught in. Okay, and I say most, not because of one religion, but I mean virtually every religion, every spiritual pathway out there goes down the same rabbit hole. Okay, but I will tell you this. What is in the Bible, the backbone of it is sound. Unfortunately, there is so much that's been yanked out of it that we are left questioning a lot of things. And we could pull that apart day in and day out. But I found one thing, and I've gone off the deep end on occasion. I know I did this morning. My son was being bullied at school, and that did not go over well because he says they're not doing anything because the kid doesn't understand what he's doing. Well, like I told my son, okay, that's garbage. If he doesn't understand it, that does not mean you tell him it's okay to do it. You don't just slap him on the wrist and go, it's okay, kid. We know you don't know what you're doing. That is a cop-out on virtually everybody's standpoint. Yes, some people have trouble wrapping their brain around it. See, I got one up on you there, Lazarus. Lazarus goes, I can't look in mirrors. I'm half a vampire. I was dating a lass a number of years back. And she said she couldn't stand seeing herself in the mirror at all. Right. I looked at her, I says, you think you got it bad? I said, I can't see myself in the mirror in the morning. And she goes, why? What's wrong? I says, I refuse to look. But the reality of it is when you take a look in the mirror, and I'm talking the physical one or the metaphorical one, somebody made the comment the other day because I hadn't done anything with my hair and it looked like I'd stuck my finger in a light socket. Because my hair was everywhere and they made the comment I looked like Einstein. The reality is I get up in the morning and I don't do a lot in the way of combing my hair because frankly, I don't leave the house. So I'm thinking, well, let's see. I don't leave the house. So what other people think of the way I look doesn't really matter. My other half, even if she were living in the same house with me, would never see my hair anyway. She's blind. Okay. You know, the difficult part for people is this. We're taught that fear is a bad thing. You know, fear will immobilize you. Well, here's the reality. Okay, at least as I see it. You know, yes, fear can be a pain in the neck, but courage is not a lack of fear. Courage is action in spite of fear. You know, see, yeah, I'm just looking at that, Lazarus. You know, my mom and dad, when my hair was way down here, it used to be down past my elbows. And mom and dad would look at me and go, Keith, when are you going to get your hair cut? I said, I'm not. Well, why not? I said, I can't figure out which one to cut. You know, but take a look at where your life is. If you're afraid of losing something, okay, we'll just walk through these one at a time. If you're afraid of losing your partner in life, be it a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, I don't care. If you're afraid of losing them, I will tell you, and do not do the stupid thing I've seen people do. Be honest with them, come right out and talk to them. Ask them how things are going from their standpoint, how, you know, what is necessary to make your relationship better. Okay. Now, here's the thing, and I've had people do this way too often. I remember one individual in particular, I told them, I said, you desire the relationship you're in to work. That's no problem. Come right out and be honest with your other half. Come right out and tell them. Absolutely imperative. So what did this genius do? They turned around. They went and cheated on their other half, then went to their other half and said, look, I'm just doing what I was told. I'm being honest with you. And because I'm being honest with you, I know we can work it out. So the other half goes, well, what happened? Well, I cheated on you. Now, for some reason, that whole idea of being honest kind of went rather screwballed. Okay. Oh, I'd like to say it is in one sense there, Joe, but in all fairness, I remember a lifetime when the church started. And rest assured, it's no more corrupt today than it was then. It's held a pretty static pattern on that one. You know, I've dealt with people, you know, all along in much the same way. Like when I was being bullied, and that's one thing that sets me off really badly, which is why I pay real close attention as much as I can to what's going on in the chat room as well. Here's one for you, Lunar. Take a look at those Bibles, and this will undoubtedly, if you've got different Bibles from different years, take a look at the wording in them. Now, the theory is the Bible hasn't been changed. I'll tell you right now, and I've done this myself, so don't take my word for it. Take a look at Bibles printed in different years. Okay, I know for an absolute certainty, you go back 50 years, okay, and find a Bible from back then of the same the same title that you're working with. Compare two Bibles of the same version, of the same Bible, but published in different years. Go through it, and if they are not word for word translated, they are not the same. Okay. There are unfortunately lots of people out there. It doesn't matter what religion you go to, doesn't matter what spiritual path you go to. Okay, I've talked to the to witches that headed a coven. Okay, some of them are absolutely radical, but the reality is every time that you take a look at any given religion, any given race, any given species. Understand there are good people and bad people in all of them. Okay. And if we continue following down that road of let's fear everybody around us, I will tell you the society that you've got is going to continue to degrade. Okay. If people keep pushing for more money and less work, then society is going to continue having a problem. Now, I will tell you, when I talk about sharing prices, okay, my own company, my own business, and this is what I mean by the tools I offer are ones that I personally use. Back in May of last year, in May of 2022, okay, in May of 2022, at the start of it, I was charging $180 an hour. I'd fallen into the same path everybody else did. Okay. And every year I was bringing the prices up a little, or every 2 or 3 years. But in May of 2022, I went, this is insane. The people that require assistance haven't got a prayer of making that. Okay. So I looked at it and went, well, I can keep bringing the prices up, but all that does is encourage inflation, encourages hardship. Now, am I going to do things for free? Absolutely not, aside from this. There's many YouTubers I've seen that what they'll do is they'll get to a certain limit, a certain amount, and then they'll all of a sudden go, oh, I'm going to start charging right now. I'll tell you right now, let's say I get to 100, let's get to the 1,000 mark. We get there and I go, oh, look, I've got all these followers. Now I'm going to milk them. I'm going to say, okay, it's going to cost X dollars to get into this other stuff. Okay. Anything that is free now will remain free because I don't see the point in penalizing people that are sticking around. It doesn't add up for me. Okay. What do we got? I'm just looking at some of what's written here. And Lunar Sparks is going, French from the 1800s with locks. The neat thing with French is what we get taught in school, at least in BC here. The French we get taught here, they don't speak in Quebec and they don't speak in France. Now, why we're getting taught a language that nobody speaks, I have no idea. At least if we were still being taught Latin, we would have something stable to work with. Okay, that's just the reality behind it. So from my standpoint, again, we can look at fear, but I take a look at this issue of I get down the road another year. Well, even I get down the road 4 months, and I'm going to run into some serious troubles if I'm not careful, if I'm not proactive. Now, I can take that fear that I'm not going to make any headway and just curl up in a ball and wait to die. I do have that choice. Of course, in my case, dying hasn't worked out all that well. Let me ask you this, Philip. Philip's just saying I have way too much fear, way beyond reasonable. Okay, so let me ask you this. Do you have any idea at all as to how to alleviate some of that fear? That's the thing we have to look at. Is how do you look at your world and change it so the fear is no longer a driving factor? Okay, I do know that from my standpoint, the way I figured it out was go, okay, what am I afraid of? What am I afraid of and what can I do about it? And sometimes it's one of these things you look at the fear and you go, well, I don't have any reason to do anything with it. Apparently, I'm not allowed to die. Well, no, that's not entirely true there, Lazarus. Apparently, I'm allowed to die. I'm just not allowed to stay that way. But then I've joked with people for years. And I keep telling them, look, Satan doesn't want me, or God doesn't want me, and Satan's afraid I'll take over. So I keep getting shipped back. So the reality of it, from my standpoint, hey Pat, how you doing? Glad you could join us. Now, for those of you that haven't, and this is sort of that odd little thing that goes completely outside of what I'm looking at, but it does have an impact apparently on the YouTube algorithm. If you haven't given us a thumbs up and you do like the stream, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up. Also, there's a neat little button down in the bottom right corner. Okay, it's a little subscribe button. If you haven't subscribed already, do me a favor and hit subscribe. The reality that I look at with the numbers is that those numbers, when I hit 1,000, okay, it doesn't change who I am. It doesn't change the way I'm going to look at the world. What it does, okay, is it changes whether or not YouTube is going to apparently send me money. Now, I don't hold any faith in that anyway. But I do know that there is this very, very big problem. The answer to that question there, Lazarus, is I have no idea on this computer how to do that. Okay. But you are more than welcome when I'm not on air. When I'm not on live, you're more than welcome to PM me or to drop me an email and we can connect. I don't have a problem with that in the slightest. Okay. But with the stream, first of all, I have no idea how I would pull that off. Besides that, I have found that this computer itself is having some serious complications. Funny part there, and Luna's just saying, my mother-in-law said, don't wish me another 50 years of life. I'm 84. You take that back, young lady. I keep telling my other half, I have, since I was a child, looked at the world. Okay. I've always looked at it and said, I desire to see the 22nd century in a functionally reasonable shape in this body. Okay, now that means, bearing in mind, right now I'm 59, I'll be 60 in a couple of months. To hit that age, I'm going to have to be 137. Okay, now I don't have a problem with shooting for that, but I did qualify in a functionally healthy body. Okay, and I was looking at it. I've been having trouble with my left leg lately, and because it's been swelling up, or at least I thought it was lately, until just this morning it dawned on me. It just dawned on me. I've been having troubles with my left leg for years, trying to get my boot on some days. Turns out I just hadn't noticed the fact the whole leg was swelling. Right. So now I look at it going, well, that's just a plain normal thing. So I don't worry like it. The reality of it from my standpoint, you take a look at it. Now we're taught to fear death. If you're not absolutely perfect, if you're not really nice to everybody, you're going to hell. Well, let me tell you, aside from the hot tubs being way too hot for my own personal liking, hell's not such a bad place. Gives you a lot of time for introspection if you can get past the pain. But I like, I get a kick out of that. Learning Sparks just going crypt keeper. I've been in a crypt before. Okay, not only having in past lives I was in a crypt, I actually walked out of one. That confused people. But when we're taught to fear death, everybody clings onto it. I'm afraid to die. I'm afraid to leave my family alone. I don't know what they'll do without me. Well, bad news. You're going to die. They're going to carry on. Okay. The trick is not, are you going to die? The question that you would be wise to start looking at is, how are you going to live? Okay. Pat's just asking, I'm going to answer the question here, Pat, but just a reminder to you guys, when you have a question, please do me a favor. Put the question in all caps so I can find it a little easier. It's simply a case of waving your hand. Now, Pat was asking, you've mentioned you have had several past lives. How about the future? Will you continue to have several lives, or is this the end? Is there an end at some point? The answer is, I will be here, and I already know this because it was laid out a long, long, long time ago. I will keep reincarnating on Earth, okay, for the next several billion years. Okay, whether I will manifest as another human, or as a corporeal, or as a plant, or what have you, that I don't know. Okay, I do know next lifetime I'm setting it up. I've already started making arrangements that I will be born into a family, not necessarily a nice family. I'm not overly worried about that. But into a family that has the wherewithal where I can actually help the people that are in trouble instead of walking all over them. Something to keep in mind, Philip, remembering a future life doesn't work. Okay. Can I plan a future life? Absolutely. But the key is in the word future. It hasn't happened. Okay. And that being said, do I know what I'm setting in motion for them down the road? Absolutely. I've already connected with the individual that next lifetime will become my wife. If she doesn't make it this time, next lifetime we will. That's just the way this goes. Yeah, I can relate to that all too well, Joe. I've done the dying thing way too often to count. From my standpoint, I don't remember the future. I plan the future. I'm not remembering, just like when I hit 70, I'm not remembering being financially in really good shape. I'm planning for it. You see, on the whole, people do not plan to fail. On the whole, people fail to plan. Okay. And that's where I've made some staggering miscalculations in spite of having writing books that have helped literally hundreds of people. Okay, maybe thousands. The books have helped hundreds. The people I've talked to, as far as consulting goes, have helped in excess of 100,000 people. I used to get a kick out of the people that phone me up, and they say, I've talked to you before and nothing you have told me has ever come to pass. So I want a reading from you. And I'm looking at them going, and I asked somebody one day, if nothing I have told you has ever come to pass, why would you possibly want to talk to me again? Let's see here. Philip's asking, have you read the short book, Same Soul, Many Bodies? The answer is no. Okay, in all fairness, I'm very, very, very poorly written, poorly read. I don't research. This is why I tell people when they ask me questions, I am not a researcher. I can take a look at a video, I can take a look at a camera and say, this is what it seems to be presenting, but I cannot tell you if it's real. I cannot tell and verify most of the things that people have researched. Okay. Now, just a thought here, Lazarus. You've made a comment here. I am Osiris. Okay, which is great, no problem. But if you remember being Osiris, you also theoretically, and it may only be a partial issue, okay, but if in fact you are Osiris reincarnated, then take some time and focus on your life when you were incarnated in that form. Okay, before you got here. It will open doors to you, to the way you see the world, in ways that right now you really do not, you really may not realize at this point. Okay. Well, I usually refer to it not so much as making up a title as maybe misremembering it, or that sort of thing. From my standpoint, Now, if I remember rightly, that would be Joe. Opie was from the Andy Griffith Show, was he not? Talk about going back a little bit. Hey, Nikki, how you doing? Glad you could join us. You know, I watched TV when I was a kid. I haven't actually watched much in the last decade. You know, but I do lately. I have been watching. You know, because I get up at like stupid o'clock in the morning, right? Get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and there's not much on, so I'll turn on. Like I turn on. What is it called now? Shoot, Ghost Whisperer. Now, for me, ghost whispering is just plain normal. We just don't whisper. I just talk to him directly. But I do caution you. Okay, talking to a ghost directly in public is a good way to get people to look at you in a really weird fashion. You know, the reality of life is you have a choice to do everything based on loving your neighbor, on helping your neighbor, or on making them feel worse. Okay. I mean, you do have, and I have asked people that. They'll insult me. I'll look at them and go, "Do you feel better?" And they're like, "Well, why?" I'm like, "Well, because the way you're treating me makes me feel pretty garbagey. So I'm just hoping it does something for you." You know, well, Phil's just written in here. Dr. Brian Weiss is the psychiatrist who became well known after his appearance on the Oprah show, talking about past lives, then talking about future lives. Your comments jogged my memory. Bonus, did you get any exercise while it was at it? You know, I'm a firm believer that future cannot be remembered. Okay, you can plan for it because people cannot come back in time is the kicker to it. Okay. Hey, Carlito, glad you could join us. You know, you can go forward in time. You absolutely can. But the hiccup to it is you move forward in time, you can't come back. The difference is this. If you jump forward, all record of you will cease. It will cease to be recorded. For, let's say you jump 20 years into the future. You'll all of a sudden stop being seen anywhere. There won't be records of you paying bills. Now, maybe you're one of these people that doesn't pay your bills to start with. Jenny, how you doing? Glad you could join us. You know, you simply stop being recorded. Then 20 years down the road, however far forward you jump, all of a sudden, here's a record of you. Okay. See, here's the thing. Something I do want all of you that I really desire all of you to realize. Everybody has an absolutely perfect memory. Okay. You all have an absolutely perfect memory. Where people run into a problem is that their recall gets all tangled and turned into knots. Okay. Now, myself, it wasn't until I started telling myself that my memory for names was going to climb. You know, it was getting better. Instead of going, my memory is just garbage where it comes to names. I'll remember them as fast as you tell me your name. I'll just forget it. As soon as I started telling myself that my memory for names was getting better, it all of a sudden flipped around, and now my memory is incredible comparatively. Okay, but you're told as you get older, your eyes are going to fail, your memory is going to go. You're not going to be able to link to reality anymore. You'll suffer from Alzheimer's. You'll suffer from all sorts of things. Things like arthritis is going to cripple you. You're going to go through all this pain. There's something to look forward to. As you retire, your body breaks down. I don't know about you, but this is where it gets to be complicated. But I'm telling you, okay, hair color, yeah, it happens. Okay, your hair may well go gray. That's a pigmentation thing. But here's the thing about your eyesight failing. I've been wearing glasses since I was in grade 8. Okay. Now, I didn't get them because of a genetic hiccup in this case. I got them because I took a trailer hitch to the right eye. Not a fun experience. But I was told my eyesight would continue to fail. Okay. I was at one point minus 5 3/4 in my right eye and minus 6 in my left. Okay. I was told as you get older, your eyesight is going to get worse. And I went, not going to happen for me. Not part of the reality I desire to live with. So now, now that was when my eyesight was last tested of a major degree. I could take my glasses and hold them right there, and I couldn't physically see them. Okay. So I was wearing glasses all the time, and then I stumbled across a neat little piece of information. And here I am in 2023. My eyesight for reading is about 2020. Okay. I still wear glasses to drive, although it would be entertaining for other people to watch what happens if I don't. Well, maybe not so entertaining. Yeah, that's not going to happen there, Lunar. Yeah. Well, I'm just looking up here. Tollaby. Lazarus is going, if we can implant memories, yeah, technically you can, but the problem is what you're doing is you're overriding them, and the real memory is still there. You can re-access the memories because it's not your memory that's gone. It's your recall that's a bit shambled. Okay. The data tree that is in that computer in your head, that is what gets scrambled. Yeah, and there you go, Lunar. Lunar's just going, I'm doing brain games on YouTube. Thing is, one of the things I found out years ago is if you, as you're getting older and you're slowing down in things, go out and learn another language. Okay. Any language. Doesn't matter what it is because it accesses another part of your brain. Okay. And this has been clinically proven to cut down on the degradation of the mental faculties. Now, I don't know about you. I figure I'm already a hoop job. But if I can stop it from going this would tick me off. This would really be frustrating. If my mind goes to the point that I forget what this thing is supposed to contain, i.e. my coffee, that's going to be rather disappointing. One of the nicest things that you can look at in life is take a look at what is scaring the daylights out of you, what is holding you back, and ask yourself this. Are you holding yourself back, or is somebody else actually doing it? Now, I will tell you, if somebody holds a gun on you, pretty good incentive not to do something. Unfortunately for me, I've had that happen. I've been held up at gunpoint. I remember the guy, he pulled a gun on me. And of course, we were in a store, and he was robbing the store. And the guy comes in, and he's got this gun waving around. And he's like, everybody down on the floor. So I looked at him, I shrugged my shoulders, hitched up my pant legs, and dropped down on my haunches. Started checking out his gun. This is an absolutely stupid move. It could have gone so many bad ways. But I dropped down on my haunches and started checking out his gun. And he looks at me, and he looks at the gun, and he looks back at me, and he goes, "Are you completely nuts?" I looked at him, and I said, well, and truth be told, the psychiatrist still hadn't come back with, are you completely off your nut yet or not? So I really didn't have a diagnosis to answer him. He goes, I told you to get down. I said, I did. On the floor. So I'm looking at his gun. I looked down at the floor. Yep, my feet were on the floor. So I looked back at his gun and says, I am. He says, lay down. I said, well, why didn't you say so in the first place? And then I promptly laid down. Now, whether this is because something didn't connect or because I'm just completely off my nut, I don't know, but I will tell you, not a wise move. And if somebody pulls a gun on you and says, lay down, do yourself a favor and lay down. Okay. Because when the cops finally showed up, the cop asked me if I knew anything else. I said if I could tell him anything about the weapon or anything. I says, yep. Guy's packing a 9mm, 7-round clip, tap for iron sights, iron, right-hand grip. And he's like, how the heck do you know all that? I said, well, the gun was 6 inches from my face. What was I supposed to look at? And the poor cop, he just looked at me dumbfounded and pulls me aside. He goes, if shotguns were legal, my job would be so much easier. I says, you got to be really careful about who you tell that to. He says, why do you think I pulled you all the way over here? Now, this is not a rational response. Okay. Well, I know it was a shocking experience for everybody else. For me, it was just kind of like, well, I did what I was told. Nobody got shot. What the heck? From my standpoint, you've got an option. You can absolutely choose to live in fear. Fear the creator, fear whoever you call the creator, if that's what you choose. But I'm telling you, from my standpoint, the person I'm afraid of is not the one I'm going to bow down to. Okay? I'm likely going to ignore most of what they tell me. Lord knows that the day I walked in on God, on his ground, the first time I walked in on him, his first comment was, you don't belong here yet. I said, well, the door was open. So this went back and forth for a while. And finally, he looks at me and he goes, you opened the door. I said, well, of course I opened the door, but it was open when I came through it. This is when I came to realize wholeheartedly that fearing the creator, and I don't care what you call the creator, it doesn't matter to me. You can call it a pickle for all I care. Okay. What matters is whether you are living up to your potential, whether you are taking responsibility for your actions, and whether you are doing what you can to modify the way your life is working if you're not content to do it. Okay. If you're not content with the way your life is running, are you doing anything to change it yourself? Or are you sitting back hoping somebody else is going to do it? Because I got some really disappointing news for you. You are the only one in existence that is going to be able to be successful for you. You're the one that's going to have to do the work. Okay. And I do agree with you there, Joe. Joe's just going, I don't fear stuff in the moment. I'll be afraid of it later, but in the moment, you have to take care of business. The reality of it is that that your drive for survival is likely to kick in most cases. Okay, but there are ways of being stupid, and I call it being stupid, not because it's politically correct, but because it's stupid. Okay, if you know that something doesn't work because you've done it before, okay, and you know that doesn't work, it's just plain stupid. And there are other words that can describe that a little bit more effectively. To do that same thing all over again. Okay. And I look in this chat room and the amount of it, and I miss that. And hopefully you'll listen to this a little later, but Maggie had to take off. But I do hope the rest of your day goes well there, Maggie. And this boils down to a question of, you're going to, when you're listening to it later, you'll hear that part. Let's see what we got going on here. One of the things that we have to realize is that fear is a fantastic motivator. Okay, it encourages you to push your own limits. It encourages you to watch your step when you're doing something that may not be in your best interest. Okay, and this is why it is so important that you double check whatever you're planning on doing. Make certain you're doing something that is actually beneficial to you. Okay. Oh, you're on your way. Okay, Lazarus, you have yourself a good night. Thank you so much for joining us. The reality of life is we can use whatever we choose to as far as a motivator goes. Okay, if that happens to be fear that you're motivating yourself with, so be it. If it works, this is what matters, not whether or not you're doing things the way everybody else suggests. Okay, this is one of those things that we have to take a look at and go, where are you heading with your life? Are you content with where it is? You mentioned that there, Joe's just gone by Raccoon, and it just brought to mind. I've gone around my apartment here. I've got a couple of raccoons that come by every now and again, and it's the neatest thing. I live in an apartment building, first floor, but these raccoons will come around and say hi. So I mean, we have to look at the world. Well, we don't have to. If we do not work together, if we choose to continue living in fear and letting fear and blame drive us, okay, as in point to somebody else and go, it's your fault I'm doing this. And it's sort of like, thanks for playing, you're wrong. You're the one responsible for your own actions. The reality of life is you get to choose what you're doing. You've got free will. You've got freedom of choice. Every member of every species has this same thing. Okay. Every single one of you does. Let me take a look at something here. Where did it go? Because I'm hoping I've still got it up there. Who was it that asked? Oh, I don't know. Maybe I wrote it down here. Nope. Oh. Just looking. Somebody asked a question the other day. And I've actually got an answer. I'm just curious who the question was asked by. That'll be. Just scanning through notes here. And I haven't moved all the ones I was supposed to, so. Okay, well, that's not going to work. Anyway, yes, that's called getting sidetracked on notes. But when we take a look at, well, that was just plain annoying. Best be doing that later. When we look at the way our life is going, it's absolutely critical that we take a look at the way your life is. Okay. Now, I don't blame you there, Joe. I've dealt with bikers. I have never ridden with bikers, but I have dealt with them. Years ago, I actually hosted a motorcycle swap meet. Right. Bikers, by their very nature, can be intimidating. Okay. I just keep missing out on the cues where I'm supposed to be intimidated by them. Don't get me wrong. Somebody like 7 foot plus looks down on me. That can be a bit imposing. But when you treat people decently, the one thing I found out with bikers specifically is if you call a biker out, in most cases, depending on the gang or club or whatever you want to call them, okay, the honorable ones, if you call a single biker out, the honorable way into a fight, they will take you on one-on-one. And the rest of the bike gang will stand around. They won't do a thing. They'll just stand there and watch. If you jump one, you're asking for a problem because they're going to jump on you like everybody's going to get involved. Okay. But bikers, like people, like ex-cons, like criminals for that matter, police, politicians, every single individual is the same in that respect. They desire to be treated with respect. Unfortunately, we are also taught that if you can intimidate somebody else, okay, then that makes you a better man or a bigger man or whatever. I'm telling you, it never worked for me. I like this. Joe goes, I ride a Harley, an 08 Fat Bob. I'm a huge man, but I try not to intimidate people by being fit. Missed that. By being humorous. You know, I used to ride a motorcycle. I could never ride a Harley. Okay. I didn't have a problem with the Harley as far as I liked the layout of it. Personally, I like the old panheads as far as appearances go. Okay. My problem was I get on the back of one and the vibration in the older Harleys would vibrate so bad it would actually dislocate my knee. I'll tell you, that takes all the fun out of riding, or more to the point, all the fun out of getting off it. You know, so from my standpoint, like I gave up riding motorcycle when I first got married in my late 20s. By the time I was in my late 20s, I quit riding motorcycle. Something about the motorcycle, since we didn't have a sidecar, wasn't my wife at the time wasn't content with them. And we figured if we had a kid, there was no way I was going to be riding one with them. Because, well, they didn't have a sidecar for me. So that just brought that to a close. Right. You know, now in all fairness, Philip, I've heard a lot of different names. I honestly have never heard the term Schwinn, but then I am not a mechanic of any functional sort. You know, I figure if I find the oil cap, I did really well. You know, but from my standpoint, it really boils down to this. There you go, Joe. You know, it boils down to this. Whatever vehicle you're comfortable with, you know, treat the people on the road with the same respect you desire to be treated. Okay. If you desire for people to drive decently around you, drive decently. Okay. I remember my brother used to live on a motorcycle. Right. And then one year, and he'd ride it. He lived in Calgary, and for anybody that knows Calgary, that means winter was pretty brutal. But he would ride motorcycle year round. Right. Now he was a big boy, so he used to ride a Honda or a Suzuki, 1,000 cc. The funny part was when he finally got a vehicle one day, got an actual car. He got an old 1979 Impala, and then decided to try and park it in the same place he used to park his motorcycle. Well, that didn't work out all that well, as you can well imagine. You know, he did get into the stall, but unfortunately had to replace half the car. You know, because it didn't quite fit as well as he was expecting. Thank you, Joe. You know, yeah, no, I gave up riding bicycles years ago. I can go up a real mild about 15 years ago. I tried riding up a very mild hill, and just that little pressure dislocated my knee. And I'm going, nope, not going to happen anymore. So I quit riding all of that, and I just settled for walking with the cane or driving. You know, I'm just looking at this issue that Nikki's talking about. The economy took one heck of a turn for the worse here, and unfortunately, that's how I ended up without a job. Is the economy took a turn for the worse, and way too many people have ended up being, way too many people have ended up losing their businesses because they just couldn't compete. In answer to your question, Philip, until 8 years ago, okay, I was so afraid of horses that I couldn't get within 15 feet of them without my hand shaking so bad I couldn't hold on to a cup of coffee. Okay, and since I live in a urban area, I don't have to deal with horses, so I just don't go out and talk to them. You know, I did finally overcome my fear of them, but that was about 8 years ago. But from childhood until I was in my late 40s, early 50s, I was absolutely terrified of horses. You know, and again, we have this neat little thing about you can live in fear or you can do something with it. Now, therefore, the question comes up, well, why didn't you deal with your fear of horses? Well, the reality was I was living in an urban area, and horses didn't come around me, so I just didn't go places they were. To me, it didn't make any functional sense. As it turned out, it was my memory that played havoc, because I never had a problem with a horse. But in kindergarten, I went out to a farm, and we were chased down by a bull, and that threw me for a loop, as it turned out. But it finally one day just went away, and exactly how, I don't rightly know. I do know my little brother used to have horses, and he asked me to come out, and he wanted to take me out and show me they were gentle. Now, I've always loved horses from a distance. They're beautiful animals, but I could never deal with them. So I went out to my brother's place, and he took me out to the horses, and all they were doing was eating. And the only movement they did was the tail swish back and forth. Well, after I sat and stood there and petted them for maybe 5 minutes, my hands were shaking so bad it took me 45 minutes before I could finally settle down. Now, I do hope, Joe, that they passed away before you buried him. I know there was one. There was a horse years ago on I believe it was the Kentucky Derby, that pushed himself so hard he died on the track. And in honor of this particular horse, I forget what the horse's name was, but in honor of him and the contributions he had made to the sport, they actually took the time, after he died. Unfortunately, it was at the end of the race, and they dug a hole and buried him right there on the track, and left him there, left him buried there, so he could continue being a part of that race. Now, whether that was their motivation or what the story was, I don't know. I do know, because I ended up talking to the horse after he died, I do know he was really happy with what they had chosen to do with him. Because animals, like people, okay, they still sense what's going on. Even once they pass away, they still know what's going on. Now, fortunately, you don't have to believe me on this one. You can take my word or not. I'm not here to prove much of anything to anybody. I'm just amazed at the amount that I actually enjoy coming in here now. What's this here? The nice part of it, again, this is one of those things. We've got life going on. You lose contact with people. Now, I've tried reaching out to people from my past, and I finally came to the conclusion that I'm not making any headway with it, so why bother continuing to try and reconnect? Because, it doesn't matter how much effort you put into something. If it involves communicating with somebody else, no matter how much effort you put in, it's only 50% of the required effort. Now, what do we got here? Pat. Pat just asking, how were you able to communicate with the horse, i.e. language? In my case, I've always been able to communicate with animals. Like, I've been doing that since I was a kid. In this case, of course, being dead, with the horse being dead, and myself being a working medium, okay, as in communicating with dead when they desire to talk, it was just for me a normal step. Got a question for you, Jenny. Any idea any memory as to what type of horse you were? Lord knows I've been run over by enough horses. Myself, I don't honestly, personally recall being a horse. Some people have accused me of being a horse's butt this lifetime, but I don't think that's the same thing. Oh, nothing like a workhorse, eh? Draft horses are magnificent animals. Okay, they really are. What do we got? Joe's just going horses and paranormal. After Casey died, I used to hear him coming around the house, which he always did whenever he got out of the corral. He wanted to be a member of your family. That's all. To me, Philip, the dead and the living are basically the same. Okay, they are simply somebody without a physical body. Doesn't matter whether it's an animal, a plant, a person, or a different race, different species. They're all virtually identical for me. You got to remember, I've been dealing with the deceased, with the disembodied, if you will, since the day I was born. How you doing, Dogface? Glad you could join us. Hope your day has been going well. I know in your case, you're usually busier than all get out, or as the other saying goes, I tend to deal with, busier than a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. Yeah, all you gotta do is jack that engine just a little there, Joe. I'm sure you can get up to 20, but I'd be careful on the corners. 37 degrees. You got to be down in the south somewhere. I keep forgetting where you're from there in Dogface. Because I'm thinking 37 degrees. We did really well today. We got up to 6. Ah, that'd be why. Okay. Yeah. That would do it. Yeah, we'll get to 37 here around about June, as in when you get right smack in the middle of winter. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like something I will tell you there, I will tell you, Joe, and I do mean this in all sincerity. Obviously you and this horse were pretty close. Okay. And I can tell you in all sincerity, when you get around to finally passing away, unless he's made arrangements earlier, he'll be there. You'll get to see him when you pass. Because the reality of it is anything with a soul, plant, animal, person, anything else, they all go to the same place. I keep getting told by people, oh, animals don't go their spirits don't go where the people are. Well, they're in for a shock when they get there. I've done this thing about going over, about passing away way too often. But you do come to the conclusion eventually that death is not the thing to fear. You can fear it, but it gets you nowhere. You're going to die anyway. The real key is taking a look at the way your life is and deciding whether or not you're going to live. How are you going to live your life? Are you going to choose to leave this world as a better place than when you got here? Or are you going to choose to make it more of a mess than what it was when you got here? That's your option. And, you can point the finger at anybody else that you desire. Okay. I'd appreciate it if you didn't point the finger at me. Like, I've had people do that. I've had a lot of people tell me it was my fault that their life turned upside down. And I'm like, I'm not quite certain how that works. Care to explain? And I mean, I could go on for hours. I've been dealing with people, usually at a distance, right, for years. I went into the restaurant today, and the restaurant was just starting to get business, and the waitress looks at me and goes, I know you don't want to be sitting close to a whole pile of people, so how about if we put you over here? My normal table was occupied, so she took me to another table. But this is because of the fact I've been very straightforward. You get too many people in the restaurant, I'm a little edgy with it. Absolutely, Adam. Absolutely. It's amazing how many people will turn around and point the finger at others. The biggest ones I'm seeing lately, right, is the government is doing this. The elites are responsible. The aliens are running the world and they're running it into the ground. The aliens don't have to run the world into the ground. Mankind is doing that all on its own without any functional effort at all. Okay. It's a wonderful thing. You've got the ability to take the planet. We, as a species, have the ability to take this planet and turn it back into a literal Garden of Eden. No fear. Well, you'll probably still have fear, but no jealousy, no greed, no famine. We have that ability within us, but it's going to take working with each other in order to make this happen. Oh, I absolutely agree with you, Nikki. Nikki's just saying there's so much fear mongering about the ETs. It's so frustrating to observe it. I keep looking at it. People say, and tell me, the ETs are going to attack. We've got to prepare for war. Newsflash, if they were to decide to attack, the war would be over before anybody on Earth even knew it was starting. Okay. There is just no comparison to that side of it. Movies are great. They're a fantastic way to deal with things. But is that likely going to happen? No. First of all, according to my sources, which happen to come from the consortium itself, they have, number one, they have rules in place to avoid that happening. And rule number two, if they were going to make it happen, all they need is one subquantum, literally a subquantum EMP pulse to destroy every electronic component that's been built. Okay, not been assembled, been built, which means all the wires that have already been built. They would make one pulse, and every electrical wire that was already in stock would be wiped out. It would be modified just enough that it couldn't carry a current. Now, when you think about that, our last 100 years, 90% of the data we have is on disk. Okay, it's on a computer. One EMP pulse, and we are all the way back in the Stone Age, because that means all of our knowledge of engineering, all of our knowledge of manufacturing is gone. Okay, it's just plain gone. And most of the people, that are alive today don't even know how to preserve food themselves. Okay, so starvation would run absolutely rampant. Okay, and I could go down that long road, but I like this one. Instead of going down the road of we're all going to die, well, we are. In our own time, we are all going to die sooner or later. Okay, but I like the idea of we are going to pull our heads out of the sand, and I'm going to do what I can to assist you in doing that so that we can take a look at the world and go, okay, let's take us off this fear path that we're all on, that most people are on. And let's see what we can do about encouraging people to change, to communicate with each other, to share with each other the different techniques for doing things to help each other and the world at large. Because the reality is, we can choose to continue listening to people saying the world's going to end. And it will. Several billion years down the road, I might add, which, by the way, pretty much takes anybody alive today out of the equation. Because much as I'm aiming to see the 22nd century, I'm not betting on making the 23rd one. In the 22nd century, I would be 137 years old. Now, that's going to be pushing it. Okay, but I will do what I can. And again, I am working on doing it in a functionally healthy body. Okay, now, from that end, I am doing what I can to turn it around. And I really, quite honestly, it's kind of an odd setup for me. But the support that I personally get in this room is absolutely astounding. and really does help me with getting my body running properly. It does help me get motivated to that end. And for that, I cannot thank you guys enough. One thing, where is it here? Let us bring that up. That one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12 to Mobian. 13, 14. Right now, I think that's the end of it. Yeah. Right now, okay, I have 20. So I made a short list of the different races and different ships, because people kept asking me, "What's this ship look like?" So I'm going to be going through it here, and I'm going to do a second list that literally identifies them not by race but by ship first. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Nikki. Unfortunately, I didn't learn much of that. So what I did was I found people that know how to do it really well. My best friend he grew up on the farm, right? So it works out really well. We get along fine, both he and his parents and I. Personally, I'm afraid, I keep looking at it going like this. If the world's going to come to a grinding halt, would somebody mind arranging for me to be right at the epicenter of it, so I don't have to pick up the pieces all over again? I remember being there to pick up the pieces in Pompeii, at the end of Rome, at the right smack in the middle of the Black Death. Okay, I remember being there for the collapse of Manoa. I even remember being there for the Exodus from Egypt. And yes, that has been proven. It's been scientifically proven to have occurred about 10 years ago now, I think, maybe a little sooner, where they found the remnants of the Egyptian soldiers at the bottom of the Red Sea. Okay, so whether you believe in what's written or not, take a look at the physical facts. Mind you, I have talked to people that have told me flat out dinosaurs were a hoax. They didn't happen. I'm going like, gee, I'm not certain how that's going to work out all that well, because there's some pretty humongous bones that were put deep underground as a hoax. I'm thinking that's one heck of a hilarious stunt. A lot of effort in my eyes. But just to be clear, guys, oh yeah, we're getting close, but the reality is that we do have an option here. And if you can find it in your heart to take a look at whatever you're afraid of and use that as a motivator to really shift gears around and really push the idea of utilizing that to give you incentive to change the way your life is going. If you're worried about getting old and having too much junk around you that you don't know what to do with, do something about it. Start getting rid of it now. And I don't mean just throw it out. Okay. I mean, recycle it, turn it over to somebody that can put it to use or that has a use for it, sell it, send it to a secondhand or a thrift shop or whatever. But start disposing of stuff you don't require now. Okay. When you find something that you're afraid of, it's time. That's an indication that you are. And most of the illnesses that people suffer from are literally diseases. Something that's going on in your life is not working well. Well, that's the funny thing there, Philip. I do agree with you. About 8 years ago in England, they actually found the skeleton of a lizard that was, I think, about 4 feet long. Okay. with a dual nasal cavity. Okay, where one cavity was absolutely charred to the bone. And when they tested it, they did discover, and I have no idea where I found this piece of information. Okay, but when they tested it, they did discover that that there had to have been a fire going down the one nostril. Okay, so is there physical, quantifiable proof that dragons walked the world at one point? The answer is yes. The world, how you doing? Glad you could join us. I'm guessing your day has been going very little on the hectic side. The reality of it is your life usually is. But no, most of the myths that we hear about, okay, most of the cryptids that we hear about, most of the religions and the gods we hear about from the past are based, at least in part, in reality. Okay, there has been something that brought it about. Okay, we know for an absolute certainty the giants used to walk the earth. Okay, now for those of you who are not aware, those giants were also known as the Anunnaki. Okay, at least from everything I've come to understand, but we know they walked the earth because we've got skeletal remains of them. Okay. The reality of life is you have freedom of choice. You can do what you will. I'm not telling you believe everything I'm saying. I'll tell you flat out, don't. Go and do your own research. Go and look into things yourself to make sure it fits. Okay. And with that said, where are we? We are there. With that said, this is an opportunity for all of us to really get off the couch, put our heads together, and figure out how to work with each other, how to share that information in order to turn this world back around, in spite of what is being done by the governments, by the so-called elite, by the so-called specialty groups. Okay, in spite of all that, we still, as a species, number one, we outnumber them. Okay, it's just that simple. It was shown really nicely in the show A Bug's Life. It was stated really nicely. One individual may not do a whole lot, but if we can mobilize everybody, if we can start mobilizing people en masse, okay, to really turn around and work together, we can, in spite of what's being done, we can make this world a better place. It's just that simple, and we can leave it in better shape than it was when we got here. But the choice is yours. Now, to that end, because we're running at the end here, if you like the stream, do give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and certainly hit the alert button that shows up so you know when I'm coming on next, which, by the way, usually boils down to, I'm usually on 6 days a week lately. Okay, coming on at 4:30. Okay, 4:30 p.m. PST. Okay, I do hope to see you here again. Okay, and with that in mind, until we meet again, do take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.